He has made more than $100 million online the last years and is considered to be one of the best marketers in the world. In this exclusive interview, I got 1 hour and 40 minutes with Jason Fladlien, and he will tell us more about his personal traits and his personal habits that's helped him make all this success. He also talks about other top marketers such as Bob Proctor and Kevin Harrington and Joe Polish, to mention a few, and what habits you can learn from to make you successful. Obviously, this interview is concentrated a lot around online marketing, and Jason will give you the 5 best ways to make money online right now, and he also give his perspective on COVID-19 and how it's changed in the online landscape now and forever. Don't miss this interview. It's packed with insights and inspiration and great knowledge. And if you want to take part of the transcript to better utilize this information, you can just download it on the link below. It's totally free. And guys, be prepared, because Jason is a straight shooter.
Audio Jungle.
Okay, welcome back to Killing 40's show. Today I'm honored, I'm excited, I'm super grateful to have one of the top marketers in the world with me, the author of the best-selling One to Many, about how you will crush it on webinars. And he's also called the $100 million webinar man. Jason Fladlien, welcome.
Carl, it's great to be here.
How are you?
I'm pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, good, perfect. So let's jump right into it. I mean, you have a very interesting background. I mean, I met you before, so I heard some of it. I think it's really interesting for people to hear, where did you come from, your journey, and how you ended up being one of the best marketers in the world.
Right. So like a lot of successful entrepreneurs, Carl, I think we all come from either some sort of chaos, dysfunction, turmoil, or something that was atypical. Therefore, we didn't follow the typical approach to life. And then as an extension of that, to finances, which are for most people a large portion of their life. Because, if you don't have a roof over your head and food in your belly, you're going to probably die. So that's the idea. So I had a very unique perspective in terms of how I kind of grew up. First of all, I was super blessed because my dad was a high school teacher, which meant, and he had the least amount of qualification you could have to be a teacher. So that meant they pay based on degree in the United States. And so that's nothing, especially in the early 80s. My dad, we were broke, like super duper broke. And my dad always had this mentality that he had to save up for retirement. So even though we were broke, we were even more broke because most of the money he made, he put away in, like an IRA or whatever, retirement plan for teachers. That hilariously enough to this very day, retired many years later, he still has yet to touch. It's sort of a limiting belief related to money. And I've found along the way, a lot of people have a weird association with money. But I was about 3 years old and my dad brought a computer home, like an Apple II, I believe it was. And because he was teaching word processing or typewriting or something very basic, which in 1986, people didn't have a personal computer. There was no such thing as a PC. Not really, unless you were rich or a hobbyist and you built your own. And so I was able to have a computer and be really one of the first ever generations to be raised on technology. Kids these days, like you could put a 3-year-old kid in front of an iPhone or a tablet, and they'll intuitively, very quickly start to understand how it's used. I was really benefited because I had a computer, but back then they didn't have graphical user interfaces. So everything was done on a command prompt line. Like you had to write run to run a program. You had to type it in. So I learned how to type and do that kind of stuff. They didn't have a mouse back then. And again, I wasn't like in my middle ages now adapting to computers. I was 3 years old. And I picked it up like a sponge. I also was very, very blessed to have a brain that just seems to understand things very quickly, process information very rapidly. So, you combine those two factors together, and I was already kind of like wanting to study and everything. 1 second, Carl, I have my son here.
Yeah, no problem.
What's going on, Max?
My Google Meet's not working until I pass it up.
It's okay, buddy. We'll just have to skip this one. Yeah, so it's an interesting time, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more. I have to. The kids are all doing online schooling right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
know.
my wife had to be out. So normally she's helping the kids right now. So I had to set up, and then we had this meeting, which I really wanted to take.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty, by the way, of being an entrepreneur, is you have things
True.
like that happen.
Yeah.
And even today, I'm noticing when they're doing the online schooling, the teachers, the students, the parents, they're struggling because a lot of people don't have that background of how this works. So I did. It was an advantage that I had. But I also struggled a lot early on in life because I had a very rough childhood. There was a lot of different things going on in my life. I was later diagnosed with PTSD. I had anxiety problems and issues, and I just didn't fit in anywhere. And I got in trouble a lot and very much anti-authority, anti-establishment from a very early age on.
Yeah.
And so that it was hard for me. So I got really good grades in school because that came easy to me, but I never enjoyed it. I always had a trouble with institutions and things like that. And so I always wanted to do something on my own. So the first thing I tried to do on my own was music, to be a rapper, right? And a hip hop producer, musician, recorder, mixer. I loved it all. So I started doing that. Not very successfully at first. And then one day, this guy that I was introduced to, who at one point in time had this really super successful band, which I grew up in a small town in Iowa, of all places. So it's a small state. And I was in a small town in a small state in the Midwest. And he was pretty successful in that area. He'd left, though, because he became this Hare Krishna monk, came back, and now was ready to do music again. I had linked up with him. We were going to put out an album and start producing music and such. And I was fascinated kind of because I always was intellectually curious about, because he was a vegetarian, that was part of it. So the spirituality stuff, that didn't, whatever, right? But the vegetarian stuff was interesting. I'm like, what's that about? So I started using the internet, which is a lot of things in my life start with a Google search, right? And I saw this write-up on vegetarianism that also was like, oh, this guy says Hare Krishna just like my friend over here does. So I started reading more into that. And I was at a real tough point in my life, Carl, because I was struggling. I was having multiple panic attacks a day. And I was having trouble focusing, had depression. And that just kind of changed everything for me. There was a passage that says, hey, a sane man, if he tries something out and sees benefit, he keeps doing it. That's all I ask you to do with this. And that just was the right thing at the right time for me. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So I started chanting and being like a monk. And I have a personality where I don't really have an in-between. I'm either all in on something or I'm not in it at all. So I dived in pretty hardcore. And immediately my life started improving massively. This got me more focused in my business or in my music. I didn't call it a business at the time. And along the way, ironically, everybody who was part of that kind of faded into the background. They quit because they didn't want to really step up. They kind of wanted to play at it. So I'm left. I spent all my life savings building this music business up to try to put out an album. I'm all by myself. I put it out anyway, just on the sheer tenacity that I had to try to succeed. And then it was a miserable flop. No matter how hard I worked, I couldn't make that thing work. But I started saying, well, what is it about this that isn't working? So I started researching first the music business and then business in general. And then I hit up on marketing. And I thought, whoa, this is really cool. I like this idea. Up until that point, music was the only thing that I thought that was my number one passion. But very quickly, this marketing stuff captivated me, fascinated me. It was so interesting that I said, I want to know more about this. And I love the internet. I love computers and technology. So to me, it was internet marketing. And that's why I was like, okay, let's try this. So I first tried it for music. And I was like, you know what, forget it. I don't want to sell a product or a service that is based on tastes, fads, or trends. Entertainment, I believe, even to this day, is probably the hardest thing you could ever sell. It's hard to pinpoint what somebody will be entertained and spend money on. So I started to shift my focus to information marketing, which is essentially people say, I have this huge problem, and if you can solve it for me, I'll pay you money. And I could deliver it in like a PDF, an ebook, a video program, whatever the case may be. So that's really what I got into, was that style of marketing. Let me find really interesting information and promote it. Now, I promoted it as an affiliate. So the first money I ever made online was promoting somebody else's course.
Okay.
And then if somebody bought it through my affiliate link, I got paid. And I love that model because I didn't have to set up the product. I didn't have to create the product. I didn't have to have the sales copy to sell the product or the proof. I just had to somehow get the right people in front of that offer, and hopefully somebody or other bought it. And they kind of did.
Yeah.
Not a lot and not that fast. I really didn't know what I was doing. Along the way, I had to go back to work to like support myself. So I was painting houses all day and night as like $12 an hour for this company, barely making anything. And so I tried to work on the business in the morning. Then I would go and paint, and then I'd come back at night and work till I fell asleep. And that went on. And finally I just said, you know what, instead of taking this big leap to make a whole bunch of money quickly, let me just take a smaller step to replace what I'm doing to make my living with something I could work at from home and be more efficient at it. So about this time, it was 2007, article marketing was huge because there was this web property called Easy Articles. Yeah. And Google loved it. Like you could write an article, if you put just the couple of right keywords in a couple of the right places, you could get 100, 200, 300, 400 real world people reading your article very quickly. And then what you could also do is at the bottom, you could put your little author bio box or resource box that says, you know, so-and-so is the author. And if you want to learn more about them, you can click here. Yeah. So, you know, it was like, hey, if you want to know more about this, I put together a free guide for you. You can download it by going here. And then, of course, you would then build an email list. So somebody would go there, they would put their email in. And that was one of the models that people were using article marketing for. But what I noticed was everybody hated to write these articles. Yeah. And I felt like I could because I had already written a bunch of articles trying to be an affiliate. Yeah. So I just started being an article writer for hire, what they call a ghostwriter. Did that and immediately started making a whole bunch of money, relatively speaking. At the time, to me, it was more money than I've ever seen in my life. Right? I was making like within a week, I was making about $30 an hour. Within a month, I was making about $40 an hour. Within 2 months, I was making about $50 or $60 an hour.
So did you stop painting?
Oh yeah, within the first 7 days.
Yeah, okay.
So I got a client on a Saturday. I remember this very vividly because we did interior and exterior jobs. Yeah. This one mostly interior, but this was an exterior job, and it rained that day. Okay. It was a rare day because we would typically work 6 or 7 days a week. It was a rare day I got off, so that was when I went home and I started soliciting clients essentially by going to an internet marketing forum called the Warrior Forum, posting just responding to any thread that I thought was interesting, and then had to like, you know, P.S. I write articles really cheap and I turn them around even faster, something like that, right? And then I got my first client on that Saturday where I set it up when I was home from work because I got that rare day off. By next Saturday, I had quit.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right. So it was truly amazing for 6 months. And then I got tired of writing these articles because, I mean, they were like, there's only so much you can do. I started writing about everything like buckwheat pillows and microdermabrasion and all kinds of weird, goofy topics. And it became very boring. And for many months, there was this thing in the back of my head that says, you should document what you're doing and sell this as a product. Teach people how you're doing what you're doing. So finally I did. And I created this product on how to write articles really fast. And I sold it for $4 measly. And I took an ad out on the same forum that I got those clients from, the Warrior Forum. And I started making sales of this product very quickly, way quicker than I anticipated. And because this was a forum, now keep in mind, this is back in 2007. There was no social media back then. It wasn't a term. So this was a rare accidental instance where people were buying the product and commenting on the thread because my first sales letter I ever posted online was in a forum, and you could reply to that and you could leave your comments, and people really liked the material. And a lot of it was because in our industry, I didn't know any of this, Carl, but there was no fluff, which is a lot of people love to tell you their whole story. They like to give you the history lesson. This is, you know, the Gutenberg press started in 1450 or whatever, movable type. And then here we are 500 years later and you can write an article online, right? I literally was just like, all right, you want to write articles fast? Here's the first thing you do. Now here's the second, here's the third. It was like a couple pages long. It wasn't that long. And I didn't charge that much for it, but people could read it, consume it, and apply it and see a result within 30 minutes, which is insanely rare even to this day in this business. So they were reporting back. They're like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is one of the best products I ever bought. And I was a no-name punk kid who just started, who didn't know what he was doing. The only thing I did of real intelligence that I felt at the time was on the thank you page when somebody bought, I said, hey, if I ever update this, I'll give it to you for free. Just give me your email address. Yeah. I didn't know the tech. I didn't know how to automatically add people to an email list, nothing. I was just going boom, boom, boom as fast as I could. And we sold, like I say there was no we back then. I sold over 3,000 of these units in like a week, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. I had made as much money that week selling this product as I did writing articles. So I made $4,000 writing articles that week essentially. And I made about $4,000 that same week selling this product. So this was my first week ever. I made $8,000. I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. It's to be young and naive again, like that would be fun. But I had this list now of people, and I thought, you know what, if I could just repeat this process, I think I could do really well. So find one problem, not like a bunch of problems to solve, just one singular focus. Because keep in mind, Carl, I didn't tell people where to post these articles. I didn't tell them how to monetize these articles. I just literally said, you want to write articles faster? Here's how. So one product or one problem, one solution. I didn't give them 14 different ways or 16 different techniques. I just said, do this, do this, do this, do this. It was just step by step, nothing more, right? And then the other formula I had in my mind was one sitting. So that was like, I want to write the product in one sitting, which is what I did on that first product. It was only 6 pages long. So I sat down with nothing. I got up and I had a completed product that I could sell. And I said, let me just repeat that. I don't even want to get better. Let me just see if I can repeat that. So what I would do is I'd hunt for these. I would see all these people on the forums or other places complain about one single issue. I would say, and oftentimes it was an issue I knew nothing about. I would say, let me block off one day, and I'm going to do as much research as humanly possible. And at the end of the day, I will feel like I have enough material to develop a solution to make that easier, quicker, less painless, or less painful, et cetera, right? And that's what I did. So for the next year, I would put these little products out. One problem, one solution, one sitting style products. I built up this really good following of very loyal customers who were buying everything I was putting out. And each time I'd get some new customers, get more people telling other people about it. So there was word of mouth. And then they were getting affiliates coming to me now, wanting to promote my products. And that's finally by year 2 when I got into webinars. And that just completely changed the game for everything that I did. So I really started to sell products at a higher level that were more sophisticated, higher prices to the better part of the market that was serious about and investing and willing to invest in it. And I just really, really focused on being a better marketer to the clients that matter, as I like to call them, right? Because 20% of a market will spend 80% of its money. It's a little known economic fact. So everybody goes up to the 80% though that spend the 20%. Because there's more of them, which is a huge mistake. Because if there's 4 times as many people, there's 4 times as much more noise. There's 4 times as many competitors. Actually, there's more. It's not just one-to-one situation, right? So I cater to the high-end clientele that are willing to spend the right amount of resources, not the minimal amount of resources. So I really honed in on that. And then 2013 came around. Amazon popped into the picture, and that completely changed everything. We started because we up until that point, Carl, we were selling digital stuff. Like here's how you do this online. Here's how you sell this information product, or this is a software or whatever, right? And this is the first time ever we started selling physical products as a model online. And customers just loved the idea of Amazon. It produced more success stories than we'd ever seen at the time. And customers were willing to spend money on it. More of our customers were willing to spend money on it at a rate I'd ever seen. In fact, I believe that's how you and I kind of cross paths, is that you invested in an Amazon training that we were promoting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, too, it's thanks to you guys that my, without you guys, I wouldn't succeed on Amazon as I did. Not just because of the course I bought from you, but also from the events I went to. I remember when we were in Cabo, I just launched my first product. It was just making 6,000 a month, right?
Yep.
And we had this, I don't know, was it 4 days or something in Cabo?
I think it was 3 days.
3 days, yeah. And I implemented everything every night. And the week after, from that on, it was making 70,000 a month, one product. So it's I 10 times that, thanks to the great information and knowledge you put out there.
That's right. I mean, we go in, right? So
Yeah.
it was great though, because everything that we had done prior to Amazon, because at this point in time, I had a business partner, Wilson Matos. We started a
Yeah.
company, Rapid Crush, and really kind of grew a nice support staff, brought some people in, and really was a force to be reckoned with. At that point in time, we started setting records in the internet marketing space by having the biggest affiliate promotion of all time, where we sold really over $10 million in 8 days. And to this day, and this was in 2015, to this day, it still has no single affiliate in the product launch space has ever done numbers anywhere close to that. The second biggest affiliate was also us. So we mastered that game, but we could apply all those techniques that we learned online to Amazon in a way that everybody else wasn't aware of, because I cut my teeth doing all kinds of stuff, from article writing to membership sites to copywriting to services, software, and any and everything in between, right?
Yeah.
And so it was really, really, really an exciting period of time. But, one thing, and I always warn my customers of this, is a lot of people got into the Amazon space and they treated it like a lottery ticket, not like a real business.
Yeah.
And so they made a lot of money, but then they also suffered some of the challenges by not having some of the other fundamentals or focusing on, despite our repeated attempts to get them to focus. And so a lot of people, it was easy come, easy go. And it just reminded me at the end of the day is like, what is really sacred in this business? And, the Amazon was great, but, and I still love it, don't get me wrong, but to me, the stuff we did as an affiliate to sell Amazon was more potent and more powerful. And that was the lesson I really felt behind this. But along the way, just another feather in the cap of learning everything that I've learned in this business, in the $100 million in sales that come as a result of that, and the obvious financial independent, and having thousands and thousands and thousands of customers that we've helped succeed along the way. That is, in a nutshell, my story.
And that's an amazing story. I love it. So if we dive in onto you as a person, because I mean, we heard your story. If you look at, why you are so successful, your personal traits or habits. I mean, you mentioned, the way you can process information, and I've heard you tell that, many, many times on events and other webinars. But except processing information, what other traits or habits do you have that, made you succeed?
So I think the one that is most powerful and obvious and most often overlooked is curiosity. I have a childlike curiosity that just seems to be insatiable. And so when I approach things that I don't know about, I'm like, ooh, let me figure this out. Let me learn. Let me understand this better. And I'm drawn to it. Well, what I've observed in our business, Carl, is that a lot of people, they don't have that curious approach. They have more of an approach of like, I got to be successful with this. What if I fail? And they get freaked out, right? If you're curious, it's not a conversation of success or failure. It's just, let me find out more. And that makes it easier to do things and not worry about the results. And then what you'll discover is, and I say this all the time, it's often we don't make the right decisions. We make decisions right. And so we'll start off doing something that is completely backwards, completely wrong. We'll observe the response to that, and then we'll make the adjustments. And it's in the adjustments are where the fortunes are. And so curiosity, which we're all born with, every child is the most curious creature you've ever seen, right? And then somehow we either lose it or it's beaten out of us along the way. I've been able to always maintain that because I've associated so much joy and pleasure with learning new stuff. And so when I approach something that I don't know yet, that I'm trying to figure out, I have just this joy of, ooh, let me see what I can figure out. So from that perspective then, Carl, it's always a net positive win. Because if I learned anything I didn't know before, I call it a win. But when other people measure something as, did I achieve this result or not? They can fail, and often you will fail the first time you try something. I mean, it's very rare there's anything that you immediately do that's worth doing that instantly is done correctly. Just doesn't happen.
True, very true. So it's curiosity, I would say.
So I would say curiosity is one of the strongest, if not the strongest traits that I have. Another one too is I have a really well-developed relationship with wealth and money. And let me unpack that a little bit. So it doesn't matter what the thing is. It could be business, it could be health, it could be relationships, what name you. A lot of people want something and they're simultaneously what they want, they're conflicted about. I always, in my mind, picture somebody trying to drive a car with their foot on the gas and the foot on the brake. So in the business world, a lot of people want to make money, but there's a part of them that feels very uncomfortable about this desire to want to make millions of dollars. They feel, some of the issues are that you're greedy if you want to make that kind of money. And if you're religious, then it's even 10 times worse, because then you think of scripture that talks about how it's easier to pull a camel through a needle eye than it is for a rich man to get in heaven. And, money is the root of all evil, that kind of nonsense, So there's a lot of those things. So imagine somebody who simultaneously wants financial independence, but is told by their society or their inner voice that having a lot of money equals you're a bad person. They are at conflict with themselves. And that is hard. Even if they succeed, they will probably fail because there is some internal strife that is getting in their way. And so I've spent a lot of time just reflecting upon and trying to understand wealth. And I have understood wealth in a way that makes me 100% comfortable with obtaining it. And I mean, you've seen me, Carl, like when I sell product, I sell. I mean, I don't hide the fact that I'm selling you something. I actually brag up the fact in a lot of ways. I am very direct with people. I'm certainly not winning popularity contests necessarily, but that directness typically helps to lead to their insight. And I think you don't get that clarity and that directness without sitting down there and reconciling it. Now, maybe this is the trait that is actually linked to it is I tend to not have as much resistance towards examining my weaknesses or examining my own objections or your objections if you're a customer or a potential customer, right? I typically will go straight for the constraint, the biggest thing, and look at it head on. I don't shy away from it in most areas of my life. Now, there's some areas of my life where I've had a lot of trauma where I did, and I'm now learning to work through that. But at least in business, it's kind of like, what's the biggest problem here? All right, let's hit it right away. I do that internally, then I also do that in my marketing, in my materials, and my sales. So more often than not is, somebody will come to me, if you're selling a high-end good at a high-end price point, for example, which is, by the way, the surest path to success in this business. Because, like if you want to make $1 million, you can sell 1,000 people a $1,000 course. Or you could sell 100,000 people a $10 course. Statistically speaking, everything else aside, what's more likely to make you a millionaire? Selling 1,000 people 1,000. You know what's even more likely? Selling 100 people a $10,000 thing. Right? And even more likely than that is selling 10 people a $100,000 thing. But if only it were as simple as a math equation. The challenge here is when somebody starts to offer a $5,000 solution, they get freaked out, even if they're the best in the world, because that's a lot of money. They start to say to themselves, oh my God, that's a ton of money. They also start to worry, well, if I screw up a $10 purchase, nobody's going to come for me, right? But if I screw up a $5,000 purchase, they might break in my house and kidnap my family, right? And hold them for ransom or whatever. I don't know what goofy stuff people think, right? And they put so much more pressure at these higher prices. Oftentimes, it's hard for them to sell a product at $5,000 when they themselves have never bought a product for $5,000. So that seems incongruent to them, as if like a jet salesman always owns a jet that he sells, right? I mean, there's a lot of jet salesmen. More jet salesmen don't own jets, but still sell jets than those that own jets that sell jets, right? So there's all that stuff going on, right? And this is just a micro example of a macro issue, which is this poor belief in one's ability to solve a problem, or poor belief in the ability to deliver, or the fear of making a mistake. So to me it was, and I had this at first until I worked through it. And then once I worked through it, I realized that it's really not that big of a deal. Because, here's some of the logic that I came up with. He's like, you can't create a breakthrough miracle type of solution on a $10 budget. It's impossible. So the attitude isn't how cheap can we make this? It's how world changing can we make this?
Yeah.
And then we try to make it economical. To me, that seems way more pro customer. Now, here's the bigger issue is you will turn your back on 90% of the market. So you have to be okay with realizing this isn't a communistic business. This isn't where we treat everybody fairly and equally. The masses will get what the masses get from somebody else, but for us, we will specialize in those people that are not the masses. Yeah. And it's true that 4 out of 5 people, we're not for them. And that is very uncomfortable for a lot of people to accept, Carl, because, the school systems don't create that situation, right? Yeah. And in the workplace doesn't necessarily reward that situation. And there's still even this concept that we've always been taught to treat others equally and kindly and fairly. And you should do that in social interactions, and you should do that interpersonally, right? Yeah. But in the marketplace, that can be catastrophic. That would be absolutely disastrous for most people if they took that approach. Yeah. And so it is fascinating to me, though. But here's the problem. When somebody will tell you, I don't have enough money to buy that thing you're selling, or it costs too much, or that's too expensive, or I can't afford it, or whatever description that they use, right? Very often, that is where your average business person will crumble. They will freak out. They won't know how to handle that. But what I realized, because again, this is me going very deep into the finances and wealth and economics, is let's really examine that statement and figure out what that means. So when somebody says I can't afford it, is it a question of actually being able to afford it, or is it something else? Because if that person can't afford a $1,000 product, can they afford their rent next month? Can they afford their car payment? Could they afford a life-changing or life-saving kidney transplant if needed, and to pay $1,000 for it, right? 99% of your market could. Yeah. So I can't afford it is not I can't afford it. It means for the value that I perceive that you're offering to me, it doesn't seem like it is a good deal for me to exchange $1,000 for. Yeah. Or it possibly may mean I could get $1,000 if I really wanted to, but I can't justify that additional extra effort to do that for what you're offering me right now, right? That's interesting. Yeah. Now, all of us make the same mistake internally when we talk about our own wealth. We talk about saying things that we can't afford. So a lot of people will stay in bad health, Carl, because they say, I can't afford to go to the gym, or I can't afford to eat healthier because, processed foods are way cheaper. I mean, you could spend a couple bucks a day off the dollar menu at McDonald's and you could survive for a while, right? You'll die pretty soon, but not too soon. At least you'll have something in your belly. But then at the same time, can you afford not to eat healthy? Long-term, it's going to cost you more, right? And can you afford not to engage in some sort of fitness program? Well, what'll happen if you don't is you'll think less clearly. Your brain will be more fogged and you will be unproductive, and that will cost you money. So it's actually more expensive for you not to invest in the right fitness program. It's actually more expensive for you not to eat healthy. And everybody knows that if they take the time to examine that. But we love to very quickly generalize and respond to things. So like money is like, a lot of people have this link to morality in money, as if somehow having a lot of money makes you a bad person, or conversely, some people thinking having a lot of money equals a good person, so therefore they're somehow bad now if they don't have that money, right? But I will tell you, I've seen some of the most scummiest people in the world have millions and millions of dollars, and I've seen some of the best people in the world barely have enough money to survive day in and day out, right? So money is not something that makes you a bad or a good person. And money is typically something that makes you more of who you already are. And so a lot of people are discomforted by that concept, because if they feel like they're not very sufficient, they're going to magnify their insufficientness the more money they have. And so there's this incongruence. I want to make money, but I also have this problem that if I make money, I'm afraid I'll get exposed, or that I won't be able to support it all. And, they'll think things like my family will treat me different if I have a lot of money. Well, here's something let me tell you, they will, right? You will lose friends, and you will have people expect you to do things for them that they previously didn't expect, right? You will simultaneously be envied and have people expect you to do things for them. So they will treat you worse and expect you to somehow treat them better. And I don't know what percentage that will be for you. Everybody has a different percentage. And sometimes it's just one person. Sometimes it's everybody, right? Yeah. But that will happen almost always. And so that's something you have to be prepared for. So pretending it doesn't exist allows your subconscious mind to deal with it, which is no good because now you're going to be discomforted and you don't know why, or you have to work through it. And so I think my character trait of A, curiosity, which goes hand in hand with B, the ability to confront reality as it is and then start the process of unpacking it and examining it. And trying to examine it from all angles too. That helps give me a more 360-degree holistic viewpoint of a situation, and typically then that allows me to feel more at ease with moving forward with it, and then I tend to be more successful because of it.
Okay. Great explanation and very interesting. So let's leave you for a while, and because you have worked with a lot of successful people like Kevin Harrington and Joe Polish and Bob Proctor and John Butcher and so on, and they all speak very highly of you, right? So what would you say are there, if you could tell us 3 personal traits that make them successful since you worked with them? What would that be?
Yeah, that's a great one, right? So like, let's take Bob Proctor. So he's the oldest, longest living teacher of personal development and the science of self-achievement, right? So, and the dude at 85 has more energy on the stage than anybody I've ever seen in life. Don't matter if they're 85 or 45, right? Yeah. And what Bob has is this thirst for always wanting to better himself. And he does it, I think, in a way that's non-destructive. So sometimes people will focus on like being productive. They don't care if they feel like shit the whole time. And it's like, what's the purpose of being more productive if that means you also feel worse, right? So he's done it in a way where he can continue to grow and mature and build upon himself without using it to replace some sort of lack of self-worth. And that's powerful. And so he practices what he preaches. I think that's a big deal, right? Instead of trying to pretend he's something that he's not, to try to fake it till he's make it. He's exactly who he is, and he's so authentic. And I think that allows him to continue to be a better version of himself year in and year out. And obviously he's been super duper successful. A guy like Kevin Harrington. So Kevin invented the infomercial. Ginsu knives, they became really famous and popular because of him. And Billy Mays is essentially put on the map because of Kevin Harrington. And the interesting thing about Kevin and Bob too, this is great as an example, is both of them were really into sales. They studied and learned sales. So Bob Proctor was one of the top salespeople in a lot of the programs that he used to be in before he started teaching personal development. Kevin Harrington had this massive, deep background in studying one of the greats in sales, Zig Ziglar, who I've also studied as well. And I've worked with the Zig Ziglar Corporation, Zig's family, right? Through Kevin. So Kevin had this very strong value in selling, which allowed him to learn things about how we make purchases that most people aren't aware. So when Kevin started running the infomercial, I believe the story goes like this. He didn't have to even pay any money to run an infomercial because it was like 3 a.m. in the morning. Back then, TV programming would run out of time and they would put that like rainbow colored thing on the screen at night, right?
Yeah. Remember.
We can't even fathom that today. We're done showing stuff for today. That's it, right? So he would go in there and just say, "Let me run a 30-minute spot," and they'd be like, "What?" And so they would do it for free. And then obviously nowadays it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. But he understood the principle of selling is, first of all, infomercials, fantastic phrase because it's information in a commercial form. What I do on a webinar is information first, sales second. Typically, the more you can empower somebody to understand something, the better purchase decision that they can make. So a lot of people make this mistake that somebody's going to only have an attention span of a goldfish before they decide that they buy something or not. But that couldn't be further from the truth. We would go longer if it was free and we had the energy and time and we had more interesting things to say. We always want to go longer. And so Kevin had this strong foundation in understanding sales, which is pretty much the heart of everything in business, at the end of the day, it can all be drilled down to a sales position. And so did Bob, right? Somebody like Joe Polish, which I think is fascinating as well, is Joe had three things going for him, which again is very similar. So Kevin is all about personal development and self-improvement as well. And the dude is solid. Like he is muscular, he's fit, and he's still going very strong. Like 40 years later or 30 years later, right? Joe is the same way. Like Joe eats cleaner than anybody I know. And Joe is always about putting his health first. And, he always tells a story about, he was interviewing a lady and she talks about the concept of the $1 million racehorse. So if you had a $1 million racehorse, that literally would make you $1 million if it won a race, right? Yeah. If you wouldn't keep it out all night, having it drinking and smoking and eating junk food, you would treat it well, right? Well, you're the $1 million racehorse. You're worth more than $1 million. So you got to treat yourself well. So he's a student as well. He reads just about as much as anybody I know. And what Joe has really done too is that I find fascinating is networking and connecting and putting people together in a room and, always starting with value first. So Bob does this and Kevin does this as well. Is let me do something for you first, and then maybe later you'll do something for me. And I won't even keep score. I mean, if it happens, it happens. Great. And so, and then a guy like John Butcher, who's really the chairman of a $12 billion entity, I think at this point, he sold a product that at one point in time was either purchased or given as a gift to 50% of United States households, right? And then he started this company called Lifebook, which is doing incredibly well right now, which I had helped him out with some marketing a couple of years ago. And again, the same concept is John worked on himself and looked at all the different aspects of his life. So Lifebook is the 12 areas of your life deeply examined, and then you write a book on each area of your life based on certain prompts that he gives you. When you're done, you've written your book on how you want to live your life. And so that's another commonality. All these guys place high worth on personal development, on bettering themselves and understanding themselves more. And then all of them have obviously a very strong foundational understanding of sales, which, by the way, is the most common job in the world. It's also typically by most people done very, very, very poorly. Very few people do it right. In a majority of people do it wrong. So it's the best paid job if you do it right. It's the worst paid job if you do it wrong.
True. That's very true. So let's talk about, the main subject really, and that's online marketing, digital marketing, physical products online, and so on. Why would you recommend people to focus on that? And why would you say, in your perspective, it's better than traditional business?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's better than traditional business, right? It's a matter of what are the pros and cons of each. And so I believe that right now the internet is like the gold rush era used to be in like the 1840s. There was literally a time where you could just show up with a shovel and you would dig for gold, and you could make a lot of money, right? Eventually, that doesn't exist nowadays. That doesn't mean people can't make money. It just means a lot of territory has been claimed. And so I like the timing of unclaimed territory because I would rather not get better and make more money than have to get better and make more money, even though I always work on getting better, right? The story I always tell is like there's two ways to make a lot of money in poker. Way number one is to learn, game theory and study bluffing and reading people and probabilities, right? Or the other way is find a bunch of really dumb rich guys who are horrible at poker but love to bet big money every hand, whether they have a good hand or not, right? Then you don't even have to be better and you'll make a lot more money, right? If I want to win every race, I'm just going to run against 4-year-old kids and I'll win every race, right? So that's strategy, that's strategic positioning as a concept I'm very much a fan of. Let's not make it harder than it is because it's already hard enough. And so I believe online has advantages, and you've seen them exposed with COVID-19 recently. What some of these massive advantages are. Now, people like me were prospering more than ever because we already dug our well before we were thirsty. Everybody else is now scrambling to get online. Now, this is what I always tell my clients is once things go back to normal, people aren't going to undo the progress that they made, right? They're not going to say, okay, screw this online automation stuff. Let's go back to the manual way again because, things are normal. No, they have been forced to upgrade.
Yeah.
So they won't go back. Okay.
True.
So there's less territory to claim right now. Yeah. If you were here last year, you had more chance than you do this year. Now there's still a lot of territory. That's the good news. And so like I always tell my clients, the proverb of when's the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? It's right now. Yeah. And I see that on the internet. I see a lot of things happening that allow the little guy and gal the opportunity to succeed. And in fact, they have more of an opportunity to succeed than the big, massive corporations, right? So case in point, right? You want to tell a place where the small business doesn't have a chance to succeed? Well, just look in the United States at that Small Business CARES Act relief fund nonsense that just occurred, right? So they had I don't know how much money. And then they said, we're going to do this for small businesses so they can help it out with their, we'll give them loans. And then if they don't fire anybody on their payroll, then most of that loan will be forgivable, essentially, right? Yeah. Well, guess who got all the money mostly? Ruth's Chris got $20 million. So they got the maximum twice. I don't know how you get the maximum twice. Is it really the maximum you can get it twice? I mean, that small little mom and pop shop down the street, Ruth's Chris. Yeah, right. There was another company. It was I can't remember the name of it, but it had a market cap of about $500 million. I don't think that's a small business, right? A lot of big businesses got a majority of the money available that was supposed to be for small businesses. Yeah. So that's where you lose. In the traditional, monolithic, old-fashioned, let's tie up all distribution, and the way that we win is less about being innovative, and it's more about putting up roadblocks, right? So it's your cable provider is probably not very innovative, but they control the whole thing, essentially being a monopoly, and so you have to suffer with the worst experience you've ever had in your life because the alternative is nothing, right? Yeah. That's old way of doing business. Yeah. So the new way of doing business, which is great, is those big dumb companies can't get away with that stuff online. They get embarrassed because they don't even understand how this works. Even on an Amazon perspective, which is as old as it gets in terms of commerce, right? Is big brands go in there and we embarrass them day and night on the Amazon space because they don't understand the inner workings of, people search for products online based on ingredients more so than they do based on brand name. So brand means way less online than it does offline. So congratulations. If you don't have multinational corporations with massive branding and PR campaigns, you're not starting the game at a massive disadvantage, right? So there's that. The other cool thing is the big dumb companies, they need small, agile individuals like you to help assist them. So they're overpaying for it as they should, right? Yeah. And so a lot of fortunes can be made if you want to go in that way. And I've helped some big companies, right? To go in that way to help get them online. But instead, I just love to just be agile and do it all myself and take advantage of the whole situation. So what I like about online, let me give you a couple examples, Carl. Let's say I had a message that was really important and I wanted to put it in the hands of 1 million people, okay? Until recently, the cost of me doing that would be a lot. I mean, let's just say the only hard cost was me going down to Kinko's and printing them off one at a time on an 8.5 by 11, right? Yeah. I don't know how much a copy is, but if it's 10 cents, it cost me $100,000 just in hard physical printing material. And obviously that doesn't cost the distribution of getting out of there. It doesn't factor in time or nothing else, right? But at one point in time, I think even to this day, the highest engaged post on Instagram was the picture of a plain old egg, right? Yeah. And it was done as a joke. But millions and millions and millions and millions of people were able to consume a message for free. Yeah. For free. Didn't cost that person who posted that a single penny to get that message out there, right? I find that incredible. Yeah. So there is the ability now where information can be put out there in a way that doesn't require a massive amount of roadblocks that is normally absolutely needed physically just to make work in the offline world.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I like this so much, is we can win the game by wielding information, I should say, to our advantage. So again, most companies make this mistake. They take an old world approach into the new world. So like television advertising, which by the way, now brands spend less on than they do online. So everything is moving online because that's where it's trending, right?
Yeah.
But television advertisements, typically you have certain allotted amount of time in which you can advertise. So a 15-second spot, 30-second spot, then it goes up to a minute, maybe a 2-minute spot, and then after that you got to go 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a 60-minute spot if you wanted to buy that, right? Radio, same kind of concept where it's segmented. Paper, like newspaper or magazine, you have quarter, half, full, right? But like in webinars, if I go 4.5 hours on a webinar versus 90 minutes versus 60 minutes, my cost is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So if I can continue to make sales and can continue to articulate advantages, why would I stop at 60 minutes? That's just some arbitrary, artificial number that somebody plucked out of the sky one day because, hey, you know what else is 60 minutes? An hour on a clock, right? That doesn't seem to make any sense to me, but people will bring in these old kind of biases into new media. Yeah. And man, I've been trying to teach people the opposite, Carl. Nobody seems to want to listen to me hardly ever, right? It's a losing battle, I've discovered, because if you have a certain bias, it's almost impossible to change you from that bias. So instead, I'll profit from it, right? So it's like people think that kind of concept. So they think like short content wins because they're used to short content offline when they had the economy of space. Because like I couldn't manufacture more TV programming time. I had 24 hours. I could manufacture more magazine time, but you know, am I going to give you a 400-page magazine with a bunch of ads in it? I got to print ink and paper and put that together and lay that out. That's expensive, right? But we're like, hey, listen, let's just write a 4,000-word article. Because guess what happens if you do a study of like Google? On average, the top result on Google is a 3,000+ word piece of content. So Google rewards long-form content. Why do they reward long-form content? Because they study all kinds of analytics on what users find relevant to their search queries. Because if Google doesn't produce relevant results, they're going to go somewhere else, right? And Google is home to some of the sharpest minds in the world for artificial intelligence and analytics and behavioral whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so Google has learned through raw mathematics that long-form content works better than short-form content. Now, for whatever reason, people ignore that, right? Look at podcasting. It's taken off. Most podcasts that are super successful, like a Joe Rogan, who's one of the most popular, I mean, those are 2-hour long podcasts.
Yeah.
They're not 22 minutes with 8 minutes of commercial like television, right? We have the ability to do long form content. Here's the other thing that we can do online that you can't do offline is we can micro segment. Arguably, this is what got Donald Trump elected. Instead of sending a couple messages out to a couple of groups, they targeted 46,000 different micro groups. And the cost to do that is actually cheaper because the more relevant your advertising is online, the cheaper it is. Now, there's a cost in terms of management and production of that, certainly, right? So let's just call it a wash. Let's just doesn't say it costs any more or any less. But still, it's got to be more effective if we're micro-targeting. So online, so like my friend Joe Polish, who's considered the most networked man in business today, got his start teaching carpet cleaners how to do marketing, not business owners, and not a business that is like financial planners that is, catering to the wealthy or not a sexy profession, right? Like surgeons or something like that. Carpet cleaners. Dirty, old, barely surviving, ugly 20-year van, in your driveway, sucking all the grime and dirt out of your carpet cleaners, right?
Yeah.
And he built a more successful marketing business teaching carpet cleaners than most people I know trying to sell general information. Super successful, and obviously it catapulted his career, right, into what he does now. And I love that micro-targeting concept. So I started by teaching article writers how to write faster articles.
Yeah.
It's very micro niche specific, even on the Amazon side of things. When we would teach people how to find these super obscure, weird products that nobody had ever heard of, but the data shows people are buying them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like when you can go to a Starbucks and there is over 82,000 combinations of drinks that you can order.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Good or bad, people expect to be able to have it exactly how they want it.
Yeah.
And get it on demand, right? That's what made Amazon the richest company in the world, or I should say Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, because he's like, yeah, if you think you should get it in pink and purple polka dots and it should be exactly 6 diameters and in length, right?
Yeah.
And you should be able to get it with free shipping in 2 days or less. He doesn't seem to think that's unreasonable, and he wins. And so if you're trying to serve a market, informational or otherwise, you will make more money jumping up and down in 1,000 little ponds so you can make a splash instead of trying to jump up and down in one big ocean and getting drowned. And so taking the same message and slightly curating it and slightly pointing it at many different audiences is very, very efficient. And it's also very, very, very effective. And I see that just being a mistake made over and over again is, like I could not make, like if I wanted to teach weight loss, I would lose if I went straight after weight loss, right? Yeah. Too crowded, too complicated, too much space has been claimed. I don't have any unique things that I could start to target, right? But if we started to chop that market up and say, well, weight loss to busy executives, now we might be getting somewhere because I have some affinity with that market, right? I'm similar to them, right? Yeah. Now, if we say, weight loss with busy executives, without pills, not using pills or any shortcuts, right? And using and eating mostly, say, a whole food diet without processed foods, now we might win, right? Because now we're carving and cutting up a message, right? So, we have done very well in some of these micro niches selling make money products to those niches or internet marketing products to those niches, chiropractors.
Okay, interesting.
So it is interesting, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I don't know how many chiropractors there are in the United States, but there's not that many. It's a small industry in general. Chiropractors, though, have financial means more often than most people would believe, but they also are very counter culture. So they're more open to ideas that go against the mainstream. That's part of their psychographic makeup, if we want to use a technical marketing term. And so chiropractors are great to target for make money type of products, side business type of products, right? Options traders are another great market that we have done unbelievably well in. Not teaching them how to trade options or any stock or financial instrument, but teaching them online businesses because we position them to be similar to stock markets, similar to whatever, right? But in certain ways, better, in certain ways, different, right? Yeah. We speak their language, though. Now, for whatever reasons, options traders work really good, but regular old stock traders, they don't work as good. There's something about options traders that just work. And I could tell you theoretically what I think it is, but it doesn't matter what it is, right? Yeah. That's the point. Even like a Bob Proctor crowd did unbelievably well when we would market our online products to them because he would teach them to think right about money and wealth, and then we would give them the vehicle to apply that. But we now tailor the message to specifically the types of concepts that Bob teaches that we can fulfill upon. And now we're speaking the language of the customer. Life coaches do unbelievably well with life coaches. Because again, a life coach is not like a therapist. They're different, they're counterculture. They're also typically very self-reliant and self-sufficient. And so we can help them improve their practice, their business, or start a new business online. And that's really, really responsive. So if we, if you just start to say, hey, listen, here's how you can make money online, it's not going to work. You say, hey, if you're a life coach that has less than 10 currently active clients, here's a wonderful opportunity for you to use the internet to grow your business, right? And now they're like, whoa, tell me more. That's written just for me specifically, right? Yeah. Now, it just so happens, Carl, more often than not, 80% of what you would tell a life coach to grow their business is the same stuff you would tell a chiropractor, is the same stuff that you would tell an options trader, right? Yeah. We just got to change about 20% of that and put it in their terms and from their lens of understanding. And nobody does this And that's one of the reasons why it works so well, because you gain instant trust, instant affinity, instant understanding from that market. And fundamentals are fundamentals. The same stuff is pretty much equally true no matter who it is. But those little extra things around it that surround it, that's where it all makes the difference. And so I see that mistake being made all the time is that people don't tailor to the micro. And I understand why, because business for the last 50,000 years humanity has existed has not been able to do that. It hasn't even been possible. So, it takes people a long time to change their habits and attitudes. And so if you can be the rare individual who's willing to buck that programming through generational hand-me-down, right?
Yeah.
I think there's hope for you.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So for people who want to stop trading time for money, would you say online business, online making money online is a way to do that?
Absolutely. So first of all, at some point in time, we probably always trade time for money. If you really analyze it at the end of the day. So I think it's less about the concept of let's stop trading time for money. Instead, let's allow us to trade the time for money once and then still get paid for days, weeks, months, and years beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And if we put a little extra oomph behind that time that we spent, we check in with it every once in a while, then it accelerates and momentumizes the money that we can make, right?
Yeah.
And I'm all about that. And I believe the internet has the ability to do that in a unique way that I haven't really seen anywhere else. Because I'll give you another great example. So say I'm selling something traditionally in the retail space.
Yeah.
Okay. I can only expand at the ability of how I can manage the supply chain. It is very common, you'll see in those situations where somebody's got a product that is a hit, that is just so unstoppable, and they can't fulfill it and they go out of business. Do you remember that cooler, the amazing cooler or something like that? At one point in time, it was a Kickstarter legend. It made so much money so quickly because people were like, I want that cooler. Here's my money. Give it to me later, right? That company went out of business.
It did?
Yeah.
How quick? How long were they alive?
Was a slow, gruesome death, right? Okay. Because they ran into issues where they had to make money, but all the people that there were their best customers who paid them for a product that they didn't deliver on were doubly pissed off when they started selling it on Amazon, and new customers who didn't pay them any money could buy it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they sold it to the original backers at a price they couldn't fulfill on, which was silly because they could have sold it and then it would have worked really well. But their success was their failure. So a lot of times in business, the hardest thing to do is be very, very disciplined on your rollout. So in most businesses, even though there's millions of dollars on the other side and it's just waiting, you still have to slowly pick up the money, right?
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. Online is different. There's been plenty of times for myself and my clients and my students and my customers where they hit on an idea and immediately it blows up in a good way. Immediately it's distributed. And immediately it's picked up and ran with. I have a client right now who, his name's Pedro. He's teaching people this new challenge model that he's developed, right? And he's went from, in a span of a month, of nobody's ever really heard of him, to being on every major player in this business on their speed dial. Everybody's wanting a piece of him, talking to him, doing him favors, and I'm laughing because it's just like, this guy was never heard of a month and a half ago, and he's going to take over the industry in the next month or two, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've never seen the ability for you to be able to do that anywhere else in a way where you don't have to sell your soul in the process. Because the dirty little secret of most businesses is there is a lot of people that actually have their hand in the pie because they'll say, yeah, I'll help you get into all those stores. Just give me this. Just give me that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And pretty soon you look at it, the guy that's making the least amount of money is the innovator, the creator, right?
Yeah.
The figurehead. They're the most famous and they're also the poorest.
Yeah.
And you don't get that online because there's not these traditional toll booths that get in the way like they do offline.
Yeah. Would you say, is there a difference between so to speak, traditional entrepreneur and an online entrepreneur?
There certainly can be, right? I think that I don't really call myself an entrepreneur. It's weird. I don't really identify with entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs, I feel, take unnecessary risks.
Okay.
Like they wear it as a badge of honor.
Okay.
And I'm not a huge fan of risk.
Uh,
I don't like it, right? So I'm more of a fan of let's minimize the downside to next to nothing.
yeah.
So we're only left with the upside because I can replicate that. I can compound that, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think it needs to be a go for broke scenario. Now, again, offline is let's say you got this great idea and you want to set up a store, right? Well, $300,000 of debt later and kissing every loan officer's ass to try to get that money, right? You might work.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, it's like that is, I think that's what fosters this kind of go from broke mentality. And people are celebrated in media the most, those ones who gave it their all, right? But that's not how most millionaires are made. Most of them are made very, very silently in very boring type of businesses. But they can be compounded very quickly. And so like, I like the internet because I don't feel like it's a risk. I can start not with no money. Any business you can start with no money, I would be very hesitant to enter into because everybody will start with no money. I love that little layer above no money, just enough capital. So 80% of people say, screw that, I'm out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like all those 20-something-year-old kids who want to flex on Instagram that they got a business, they'll do those no money stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, let's just have a little bit of an investment, a little skin in the game. We clear it out. We don't need to have a lot of skin in the game, just enough, right? To not have a traffic jam anymore. And then we can do everything from a situation of anti-risk. And that's what it doesn't matter if it's the Amazon business or if it's affiliate marketing or anything in between, is we can scale up out of profit. We can do so very easily and we can do so very, very quickly. So that is one of the struggles that entrepreneurs have with this business, Carl, is they need the risk. I don't know why, but there's some sort of mental projection of an image or a label. If I'm an entrepreneur, I got to take risk. And you don't, not in this business, at least, not unless you want to, but I mean, why would you want to?
No, true.
If you want to take risk, jump out of an airplane.
Yeah. So what would you say, Jason? What, in your opinion, is the 5 best ways to make money online? We're talking everything like physical products and affiliate marketing and email marketing and so on and so on.
Right. So I think the first thing that anybody should do online is learn how to write copy. So copy is salesmanship in print, or copy is short for copywriting. Yep. And so if you can learn the art of writing words that convert or messages that convert, whether they're spoken or written, doesn't matter, I think you will do very well for yourself. Because as the internet has grown, no matter what the opportunity is, it needs sales messages. So look at all those Facebook ads. That's copy. Look at all those emails you get from people trying to sell you stuff. That's copy. Every webinar, that's copy. All the listing stuff on Amazon, the reviews even. All of those are copy. And there are certain ways you can phrase something that will make people want it. And there are other ways that make them not want it. And oftentimes it's very subtle how one word or one phrase can change things completely, right? Yeah. So I think you can't go wrong if you learn the art of copy and copywriting, because that can be applied to every other business model. Yeah. Now, I believe that everybody should be diversified in this business. And so I love the Amazon, because here's what Amazon does for you. Amazon spends more money online than anybody else, by 3 times as much on advertising as the next person. They're Google's #1 biggest customer. Yeah. And Amazon controls more market share online than anybody. So the easiest way to get in front of an audience is not to build your own nightclub and then advertise for people to come in. It's to go to a packed nightclub already and stand on stage, right? Yeah. So Amazon has that. Now, Amazon isn't all, beauty in, there's a lot of you give up in terms of control or work in Amazon business. Yeah. But I'm okay with that because there's some advantages that Amazon has. So I think that everybody should have an Amazon business for no other reason than there's a lot of leverage there. Yeah. But I also believe you should have an information business too. And what I mean by that is either you're publishing solutions for people that need help with something and are willing to pay for it. And, my example I always give is if somebody can't sleep at night and you come up with a solution that allows them to get their first night of sleep that's really well rested sleep, and they feel great for the first time in years, how much is that worth to that person? Hundreds, thousands, more, right? And what if it took you 2 minutes to put that solution together? It's like, who cares, right? And it doesn't cost you anything to deliver it. So now if you're actually selling physical products on Amazon, you can pair these with digital products too, because every physical product can have a digital counterpart in terms of information, solution-minded, knowledge-based type of products, right? Now, you can be the expert. You can find experts and partner with them and publish and market the information, or you can be an affiliate and promote existing products that you know are best of class, and then but are being neglected in terms of their marketing or who they're targeting. And a lot of people don't know this, Carl, but if you sell most information products online, you get 50% of the commissions. So if you sell a $1,000 product and somebody does it through your affiliate link, so there's tracking when somebody clicks on a link, it says you referred them, and if they buy, you get credit for that sell. If I sell a $1,000 product as an affiliate, I'll make $500 almost always. So most affiliate programs, because that's how important the sale is, will give you half of the sale, because there's no risk on their part either. They're not paying for advertising out of pocket. They're paying for performance, and they will give you 50% commission. And that's true in the physical world space. It's not the percentage that's true, but there's everything that you could buy in most stores, you could get a cut on if you had somebody else buy them and be the affiliate for them. So it's crazy. So that's like the invisible model there. And then really, here's what's cool is there's an extra leverage point is the service side of it. So doing this for other people. So that's where I started my business. I wrote articles for other people. And then I published information products on those articles, on how I was able to write those articles. And then that knowledge allowed me to tap into Amazon based on what I knew on the digital side to sell physical products. And so this is a flywheel concept where you accelerate any one of the spokes and it accelerates the whole thing. So I think that those are the major areas of focus. Everything else is going to be like, if it pops up and it makes sense, you should take advantage of it. But I think those are the core fundamentals in this business that you could then spin out into any other type of business online.
Okay, that's great. Is there anything online you think people just should stay away from?
Oh yeah, most of the stuff. Oh man, it's like, here's the thing. If 99 people teach you the wrong way to do something, that doesn't mean that there isn't a right way to do it. It's just, unfortunately, the way most people show you how to do something is probably not worth any amount of money that you would pay for it, regardless of what they're charging. So it's really challenging to know the difference, though. And so I'll give you some tells that you can look for. These aren't foolproof, but they help a lot. And very often the first one is, how intelligently can somebody speak about the information, not from a sales perspective, but from a thought, expertise, knowledge perspective? Do they seem like a stone cold expert, right? I mean, judge me. Listen to this recording. And is this a guy who's pretending to know what he's talking about, or does he actually seem to know what he's talking about? I want you to listen to me like that, right? Because I am that confident that I will pass. That can't be faked, or it's very hard to. It's really easy to fake social proof. I can call up 50 of my buddies and say, write all this good stuff about me, or even better yet, I'll write it for you. You just sign your name to it. A lot of that goes on in this business, right? And that's a poor judge. Reviews are a poor judge because they can be gamed and doctored. It's very hard to game absolute stone cold knowledge when you say, well, that person can talk in a way. Doesn't guarantee it, but it's a good measurement. The other thing, and I'm always preaching this to my clients, is look at congruence. So I showed this as an example to our clients the other day. Is somebody was promoting this online opportunity, and they're like, these are just regular guys that are making money. They're just normal folk, right? And they're trying to bond with you. So they're like, oh, I'm a normal folk too, and I can do this, right? And then you go to the landing page, and they're both standing in front of some exotic $300,000 butterfly door sports cards, standing up with all these normal cliche internet marketing terms surrounding it and graphics, right? And there's some incongruence there, right? I have nothing against gurus, right? But own it, okay? And be like, listen, I'm not like you. I can't tell you how many times, Carl, I've taken that position where I said, listen, this isn't even fair what I can do that you can't do. But here's why you should still buy this anyway, despite the fact that you and I are not alike. In fact, because you and I are not alike, this is a system you should do. I designed this for you because you are not me. Not only is that a stronger sales position at the bottom of it, right? But it is super duper congruent. It's like, I can't pretend to be an everyday folk if I'm a multimillionaire, because multimillionaires are not everyday folk. So I'm either one or the other, but I can't have it both ways. And so if somebody's going to be incongruent about that, whether intentionally or by accident, it's very suspicious of where else they'll be incongruent. And so that is the big deal there. And then the last thing too is I'd always recommend is what are their priorities? So in this business, you'll find most people's priorities are with their affiliates and their joint venture partners, or whoever they have like backroom relationships with. Their priorities are those above their end customers. And that's, by the way, true in all business almost. Most people put the customer last, and they put supply chain in front of it. They put distribution in front of it. They put all kinds of other things in front of it, right? A lot of business, unfortunately, is still done on this whole concept of nepotism and cronyism, right? So it's like, I will give you the contract because your daughter and my daughter went to summer camp together once upon a time, right? It's not meritorious, unfortunately, right? And so if you're a consumer and you want to make sure you're taken care of, don't listen and just believe what they say, but independently verify where their bread is buttered at. Do they tend to make decisions that put the customer first or last or in the middle somewhere? And I think we've done a very good job of our customers in terms of putting them first at the expense of a lot of relationships. Like, Carl, I'm well respected in this business, but I'm not well liked in private, right? Most of these guys do not like me because I don't play by their rules. I call them out on their things that I don't like, and then I embarrass them in the marketplace by beating them. And all of those things frustrate them, but they respect me. Most of them pay me money to learn from me, and then ask me not to disclose that they're paying me money, right? Whatever, right? But that's the way the business works, and it will always work that way. So as a consumer, you have to take on some of that responsibility of reading between the lines and saying, where's this person's priority at? I mean, just look at customer support. That's my favorite measurement, is how good is somebody's customer support? How much do they invest in that infrastructure, right? And our customer support I love it when anybody writes into it, because it just proves to us, or proves to the customer how much that we put the customer first. And a lot of that attitude, Carl, comes from me, as I've always identified as not being taken care of very well based on, the traumas that I had in my childhood and all the craziness I was growing up with. So I developed this attitude that, like, I want to take care of other people because I wasn't taken care of. And so it's always, to me, that's like the customer is my thing that I take care of. Sometimes they don't like it, by the way, just like sometimes my kids don't like that I make them eat the vegetables before they can have the candy, right? But that's the way that it goes. So that would be my advice on that.
Okay, good. So how would you recommend anyone watching this? They want to start to make money online right now. What would you say is the three steps to do it?
Yeah, so this is really simple. Step number one is you need to identify an offer that is very, very powerful in terms of its transformative properties. What I mean by that is the right person would be super happy to pay for it because they'd be getting the better end of the deal. So that's a great offer. I always frame it this way. You have an offer so good that people would feel stupid if they didn't buy it. So you won't get that. You'll get close to that, though. So that's the first thing. You got to find the offer. The second thing is you got to find the audience, because there's no offer that is objectively good. Offers are good for certain audiences, but not other audiences, right? So there are some offers that are incredible for the small audience they serve, but they are horrible for every other audience, right? Like, try as I might, it's very hard for me to sell Bibles to Muslims. I just can't do it, And so you got to find the right audience. The best audience to find is an underserved, neglected, stepped over, stepped upon audience that somehow, some way still has some economic possibility. All right. That's a that's a line you're going to have to listen to more than watch to catch the nuances of everything I just said in it. Because there are plenty of markets, there's good reason why they're neglected and stepped over and stepped on, because they won't pay for anything and they'll expect everything. So there's a difference. You got to find that market. And then the third thing is you got to be able to connect or craft a message that connects that offer to that audience. That's the art
Yeah.
of this business. And I mean, it's very simple, just like there's 7 notes on a scale in most music, but it's not easy to write a hit song.
True. No,
So,
true.
so the last thing I would say to that is start
Yeah.
with training wheels.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
start with the smallest bite of the apple needed to be successful, right?
Yeah.
It's not sexy to do it that way, but if you study most successful people, that's how they started.
True.
A lot of spectacular results are preceded by many, many, many hours of unspectacular preparation.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. So very short, if you have a man in the 40s and he's struggling, he has a job he doesn't like, he doesn't make enough money and so on. How would you think if he does the online marketing or online business well, how would you say that could change his life? I mean, it's a weird question to ask, but how could that change a man's life?
Oh, in so many ways, right? So most people die without ever seeing more than 1% of the world. And that is very tragic because there's a lot of beautiful places in this world. And it's not that people don't want to go see them. They can't. They either financially can't or they can't take the opportunity cost trade-off because they'd have to give up something else that would be more painful for them to give up. And that's a horrible position, unfortunately, that most of us have to find ourselves in. We don't have to keep finding ourselves in that, but that's world changing. In the 40s is, and I don't speak from experience because I'm not quite there yet. I'm almost there, but not quite, right? But, historically speaking, is the 40s are when your life starts to go down the hill, not up the hill in terms of average life expectancy, right?
Yeah.
There's also true, I know in my 30s from my 20s is, I hurt my back in my 20s. It'd take me a day to recover. I hurt my back in my 30s doing yoga recently. It's been 6 months, and I'm not recovered yet, and I'm upset about it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not indestructible. It's like I feel like I need 2 naps a day at this point in time just to function. I drink 2 beers, and I have trouble getting up in the morning. In my 20s, I could drink freaking 2 cases of beer and seem to get up the next day and be indestructible. Right?
Yeah.
And so I imagine that doesn't change from the 30s to the 40s, and it probably continues to be a little bit harder each and every year, right?
True.
So there's a ticking clock.
Yeah.
There is. The other thing too is most people we had kids relatively young, so we're like the youngest in our neighborhood, but my neighbors are getting ready to go to their kids' graduations. Like I'm seeing the signs in the yard right now that says, congratulations, whatever, for graduating 2020.
Yeah.
And think about that. It's like, what do you do when your children become adults? And now it's you without the children to take care of anymore. Where's your motivation at, right?
Yeah.
There's also a part of it for me that says college isn't getting any cheaper. And also at the same time, the world isn't getting any easier from my perspective in general. I mean, the data's in, right? Suicide rates are up, depression's up, anxiety's up, drug addiction is up.
Yeah.
All of it is up. Okay. Now it's ironic because for a certain percentage of people, happiness has gone up significantly, but overall depression and pain has gone up. Right. Yeah. So there's never been a better time or a worse time to be alive than right now. Crazy, huh? But you're not destined to be in one of those camps or the others. You can force your way into the camp of choice, and hopefully that's the camp of not being in a dark place, right? Yeah. And I take that very seriously. I mean, that's most of what I do is we work on somebody's business typically first between what's in between their ears, right? Their brain and their thinking. But the concept is still the same, is the best way that you can take care of others is to take care of yourself. The best way that you can help others is to help yourself and then show them through actions, not words, on what that could look like. And so my motivation would be for somebody in their 40s is that concept, but also at the same time too is that's when a lot of us are going to feel the pressure to be like, what do I have to show in my life? It's easy when you're in your 20s to make excuses. You're just getting started. You're just building it up. Your 30s, it's still relatively easy to make those excuses. You don't have the experience yet. You don't have enough wisdom or life. In your 40s, that's done. You don't have anything to lean on. Not really. Shouldn't have leaned on it anyway, by the way. But now, nobody's going to give you the benefit of that doubt, right? Now it's kind of put up or shut up time, right? Now, by the way, a lot of people have done it later than in their 40s.
Yeah.
Okay?
True.
It's just harder. you know? So now is the time. It's not going to get any better. Putting it off is not going to make it any easier.
No.
And use that leverage to your advantage of what I just described. Don't use that as a way to feel bad. Use that as motivation to step up.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So lifestyle entrepreneurship, where you decide when to work, where from, where from you want to work, and how long you want to work, and almost, deciding how much income you will have, is often associated with online business, online marketing, right? So
it is
definitely right.
It's not true, but it is, right?
It is definitely. So how can a person become a lifestyle entrepreneur?
Right.
I mean, what does he or she have to do to get there?
Right. So if you want lifestyle, and that is certainly worth aspiring towards, and the more and more I grow, the more I trend towards lifestyle, you have to be okay with not being famous. You have to be totally fine with not being in the spotlight. And you have to totally not want or desire that type of power, because it will get in the way of your lifestyle. So unfortunately, even though it's celebrated as the online lifestyle as a sort of, make money while you sleep concept, very rarely do the thought leaders I know in this space abide by that. They work the hardest out of anybody I know. And oftentimes it's because they build personality-based businesses. And so people look at them as the hero to solve their problems, not their content, them as a personality. And there's always way more of them than there is of you. And so it's very troublesome on how to separate them. So if you build your business around this cult of personality, and the personality wants to take a break, so will the business. And it won't just take a break. You'll let a lot of people down, right? And so a lot of people try to get rich for the wrong reasons, because they are addicted to that spotlight and they want that applause. Somehow they feel like a standing ovation will make them feel better inside more than temporarily, and it rarely does, right? And so you have to be willing. Now, by the way, I'm not making a judgment. If you like that notoriety because you feel that's going to help your audience more by having a figurehead, because that's typically what people will respond to, great. You are just going to have to sacrifice other areas of your life. And Carl has seen this with me. I don't want it, but I accept a certain amount of it. If I'm at a seminar with a lot of people, I can't even go to the bathroom in peace without having 3 or 4 people following me, talking to me while I'm trying to go number one, right?
True. I know.
And it's like, I'm okay with it because I know it happens so rarely, and I put up with it because I know that it doesn't happen very often. I certainly don't build my life around it though, right? And I don't have Facebook. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have an Instagram account because I don't want to be. I'm not particularly social. It gets in the way of my creativity, right? But I'm okay with that, and I always have been okay with that. A lot of people aren't. And that can get in their way. So if you want to protect yourself from that, you either have to build a business that doesn't have the personality concept, which is hard to do, but possible, right? Or you have to put strong boundaries around your personality and what you will and won't do. And you have to be drawing the line very clearly on what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And that's just how it is. And so I think you can do that. And I think it's very often the case where that's possible. And the other thing, obviously, too, is I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am without a strong business partner like Wilson Matos. And so he does the things that are necessary that I don't enjoy, that he somehow enjoys. I don't understand it, but whatever, right? I have a good complementary business partner. And so he will do the things that I would either never do or do them, in a fit of rage because I detest and hate them so much. And so that's, I think the balance is, at the end of the day, is your strategic partnerships. Once you get to a certain point where you have something valuable that you can really take to the next level, is to look at that type of integration, as I call them, opportunities. And I think that's the best. Because, the alternative is this, Carl. You build up a massive staff and you have to build systems and procedures, and you have these gigantic payrolls. Not a fan of any of that stuff. I tried some of that stuff. I didn't like it, and I wasn't very good at it.
Okay. All right, good. So you called the $100 million webinar man, right? Yeah. And you generated more than $100 million, using webinar and using your techniques. This book, I read it, and I actually, I did a webinar after reading it just to practice. It was super cool. I loved it.
Nice.
So and can you just show the new? I have, I think, the first edition. You have a better hard copy there, right?
Yeah. So this is the hardcover version on Amazon. If anybody is crazy enough to read it.
It's a great book. I recommend everyone to actually go and get it ASAP. So you talked about how you started with webinars. We have that, but why is webinars so extremely powerful? I mean, at least for you, they are super powerful, right?
Yeah. So the number one thing you can do to sell a product is give somebody the experience of what it's like to be your customer before they have to actually be your customer. And every other way I've tried to do that had limitations that I feel like a webinar can break through. So like you could do a trial offer. You could say to a client, hey, listen, you don't even pay me anything today. Just try it out for 30 days. And then if you like it, then I'll bill you, right?
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to do that? You either got to collect their credit card up front, which is a huge ask. Or you got to not collect their credit card up and become a collection agency and then try to hunt them down and get them to pay you, which is not an enjoyable task either. Yeah. So the other ways that you can do this, like my friend Jeff Walker, who invented the product launch formula, which is probably the most used format to sell product online, right, is the way he did it. It's brilliant. You create 3 videos of content, and then the 4th video is your presentation, your sales presentation. Yeah. And so over an extended period of time of say 14 to 21 days, typically you'd see video 1, a couple of days later, you'd see video 2, a couple of days later, you'd see video 3, and then you would see the sales video a couple of days after that. Yep. And then there would be follow up to get you to consume that. And then they would shut the program down and you'd have to buy, or you couldn't buy at a certain time of day. Great format, great formula. I could never have the patience to do that. I don't like to do fancy video. I don't like to get dressed up. And it's complicated to shoot video from my perspective, right? Now everybody has a different perspective. So you work with what is best for you, right? But what I loved is I could get almost the same power as a product launch, maybe a little less power, but almost the same. But I could do it in 90 minutes as opposed to 14 days or 21 days. And I could sprint it out. I didn't have to rely on technology, basic technology like a PowerPoint slide, right? I didn't have to rely on multi-camera shoots, though. I never had to be on video. Still don't usually get on video for those things, right? Yeah. I did not have to have moving parts initially. I mean, we've optimized it over time. Now it's kind of complex, but only naturally done. But when I started, Carl, it was a slide deck. And 90 minutes later, I was getting complete strangers to spend $1,000 to $2,000 with me. And the main reason they did was because they said, whoa, in the first 15 minutes of hearing this guy talk, I've gotten more insight into my problem than the last 15 people I've heard talk for the last 15 hours on this exact topic. Yeah. Whoa. That's an aha moment. That's a paradigm shift. That's when somebody says, if there's anybody that can help me realize a solution, it might just be this guy. And I got you. That's exactly where I want you thinking, because I'm showing you what it's like to be my customer by giving you results in advance, insight in advance, and I'm doing it in a hyper efficient manner. And I think anybody can do that. It's a formula. It's a format that I've used and figured out over time. And then that's, to me, the brilliance of the webinar is having that insight. And I mean, I'm sure in this interview we've done today, Carl, people are like, well, this is really insightful and really valuable. Yeah. And I hope it is, right? But here's the difference between this and a webinar. In a webinar, I'll spend 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 hours in advance thinking everything through. Yeah. Today it was like, here's a list of questions and let's go. Push a button, right? That is the difference. The difference is the purposeful, specific thought process of how can I show somebody the best insight to this challenge ever. It is some work. Spoiler alert, right? It is always going to be some work. You can't get rich without work, but it's very, very effective work, very quickly done. So for most of you listening right now, if you spent 4 hours with that basic structure and to set a timer, you would have a piece of content to point out an audience that is probably more insightful than people who have been at it for 20 years. Because there's just basic ways in which people understand information, consume it, relate to it, emotionally connect to it. And if you can understand those, they're very simple to understand. And then you can use those to talk to your customer in their language, right? then you can do effective communication. Right now, everybody's talking in Spanish over here to somebody who only understands French over there.
Yeah.
And then they're wondering why nobody's understanding anything.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Okay, that's great. So the current situation with COVID-19, not so fun, of course, it's affecting everyone in the world right now.
Yep.
How would you say it affects an internet? How will it change internet? And even more, what possibilities do you see for people who want to get on and start making money online?
So I would never hope to ever have a pandemic, right? It's certainly, I would rather have it be hard to make money online and not have it, but there's no better time than right now to make money online.
In what way?
In every way. So I'll break it down for you. So first of all, people don't have anything to do. Not like they used to, right? And so consumption of everything online has gone up. So that means the emails we send out are opened at a higher rate right now. The webinars that we do are attended at a higher rate, and the watch time is at a higher rate. Everything is at a higher rate. At the same time, ad costs are down if you're advertising anywhere. And you say, well, how's that, Jason? 2 reasons. One is there's more inventory available because more people are online than ever. So there's more space to buy advertising. And anytime you have excess inventory, they will charge you less and less to fill that inventory, right? Yeah. Second reason, while the cost of advertising is down, is unfortunately all these very bloated businesses, most of them offline, who didn't know what they were doing online but clogging the pipes for the rest of us. Yeah. Unfortunately, they're out of business right now, or they cut advertising out of their budget to stay in business. And so there's less people buying ads and there's more ads available. So that's the first reason. Second reason is people like to shop, especially in Western society. Consumerism is a tenet, essentially, of the United States experience. A lot of people feel good and they get a dopamine rush when they shop. Well, if you can't do your shopping in person anymore, where do you turn? You turn online, right? The other thing too is a lot of people are scrambling to figure out to make sense of this online world. How do I do a Zoom meeting? How do I set this up and do this virtually? I mean, most people now are for the first time ever opening up tools like PowerPoint or Google Slides or working on those types of things. And they're learning how to do remote work and virtual type of meetings, right? Yeah. Awesome. Two things to that. One is that's a shorter step from that to doing what we do online. But the second thing too is there's a lot of businesses that have to make that pivot that are now seeking out information. And it goes back to my earlier point, which is when this is over with, businesses aren't going to undo what they're doing right now. If a company notices massive improvement of finally getting their workers virtualized, they're not going to say, okay, forget that improvement. Let's just go back to the way things were. They're going to keep it, right? Yeah. And by the way, when was the best time to buy real estate? It was right when the real estate market crashed. For those who could afford to buy real estate, they got it really cheaply because most people couldn't afford it. And so when most of these businesses go out of business, there's going to be those who remain or those who start that are going to have a massive advantage. Now, it's a double-edged sword. Easy come, easy go. Yeah. This gets you in the game. But then you got to level up your skills at some point in time because eventually when things sort out, which will be a couple years, because it's just like an echo effect, right? If you don't have real value, you won't last long. So either don't spend your money and save it. So when you go out of business, at least you have something, right? Or use this as a way to earn while you learn, which I'm a huge advocate of. Okay, very good. So what trends do you see in the future when it comes, if we keep it specific to online marketing, online businesses? Do you see any trends and what is it? Oh, yeah. I mean, more people are going to do virtual meetings and they're going to have to be good at communication virtually. So we're seeing a lot of businesses and a lot of people in general, they use these crutches of in-person meetings or in-person seminars. And those crutches are it's weird. They work, but they don't make you a better person. What I mean by that is people will trust you just if they can reach out and touch you. Doesn't mean your message is any better, but just because you're in close physical proximity, there's an ease of trust. Guess what happens when you don't have close physical proximity? You have to make up for that with a certain type of communication, right? They're going to learn that or they're going to die. And so what's great is for people like us online who understand the power of communication, we're going to thrive because they're going to turn to us and need help. And you can either be one of those people or you can be an affiliate who refers people to them, right?
Yeah.
So that's just one of many, many, many opportunities online. But even things like YouTube is going up massively. So if you want to take a presence in media right now and start publishing YouTube videos, what better time than now to do something like that? And a YouTube video can be a recording from a Zoom call. You know, it doesn't have to be fancy.
Yeah. True. Good. So finally then, I mean, there's been, this interview has been filled with inspiration and great advice and knowledge. And thank you so much for taking your time. I know you're so busy. So if you would get one single advice right now for all the viewers, one single advice to succeed online, what would that be? One advice.
One advice. Yeah, it's very simple. Your goal is to fail as quickly as you possibly can with starting an online business in the next 30 days. I don't want you to succeed. I want you to fail as quickly as you can.
Fail how?
You try selling something to somebody in the real world and fail at it. Either you picked the wrong product, you said it the wrong way, or you're talking to the wrong person. Try it in earnest. Try as hard as you can to succeed for the next 30 days. Try it. Okay? Because the experience you gain in failure not only will be insight into what is successful, but very often, as long as you're sincere, the people that you fail are the people that will help you become successful. They're the kinds of people that can tell that you're sincere, and they'll say, well, listen, if you were able to do this, this, and this, then I would have said yes. Or they would say, hey, listen, that wasn't for me, but I really like your attitude. Let me have you talk to this person over here. I think it might be for them, right? Or let me open this door for you. Or when you run out of ways to fail, you finally just give up on what your preconceived notions are and your biases, which we all have, and you say, okay, maybe now I'm open to other things to try, and that's usually almost always where the breakthroughs are. But everybody wants to get it perfect before they start. But, you know, perfect is the enemy of done. So get it done, and then we can get it right. All right.
That's a great advice. I love it. All right, Jason, that was a packed almost 2 hours, and I'm so grateful for this interview. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Carl. It was a pleasure.